The summer of 1947 did not begin with violence. It began with anticipation, uneasy, uneven, but real. Across British India, a century of colonial rule was ending. The machinery of empire, once rigid and immovable, had begun to loosen. In cities like Lahore and Delhi, there was talk of sovereignty, of self-rule, of a future that might finally belong to those who had lived under foreign authority for generations. For decades, political leaders had argued, negotiated, and resisted. Figures like Mahatma Gandhi had mobilized millions through non-violence, while Muhammad Ali Jinnah articulated a different vision, one in which Muslims of the subcontinent would form their own nation, separate from a Hindu-majority India. Between them stood Jawaharlal Nehru, navigating a fragile path toward independence. If you enjoy learning about history, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and share it with your friends. In the comments, let me know where you're listening from. I would love to hear from you. This narrative is grounded in documented historical sources, including primary records and academic research, some of which you can see on your screen now. All references used in this documentary are also listed in the description below. For many ordinary people, these debates felt distant. In villages across Punjab and Bengal, daily life continued with a kind of practiced rhythm. Markets opened at dawn, farmers tended fields that had belonged to their families for generations. Religious identity, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, mattered, but it did not always divide. In countless towns, neighbors celebrated each other's festivals, shared water from the same wells, relied on one another in ways that politics could not easily unravel. But beneath this surface, the ground had already begun to shift. The British Empire, exhausted after World War II, was no longer capable or willing to maintain its hold over India. Economic strain, growing unrest, and international pressure had made withdrawal inevitable. Yet the manner of that withdrawal remained uncertain. Power had to be transferred, but to whom and under what arrangement? The idea of partition, once considered a remote possibility, began to take shape as a solution to an increasingly volatile problem. Communal tensions, which had flared intermittently for decades, were intensifying. Riots in places like Calcutta in 1946 had left thousands dead, offering a grim preview of what unchecked division could unleash. Still, even as negotiations accelerated, few fully grasped what partition would mean in practice. In February 1947, the British government announced it would leave India no later than June 1948. But the timeline would soon compress dramatically. By August of that same year, power would be handed over, not to a single unified state, but to two dominions, India and Pakistan. The question was no longer whether partition would happen. It was how, and more dangerously, how quickly. In June 1947, a British lawyer named Cyril Radcliffe arrived in India. He had never been there before. He had no experience with its languages, its politics, or its geography. Yet he was tasked with drawing the boundaries that would divide Punjab and Bengal, regions where communities were deeply interwoven, where religious majorities shifted from one district to the next, where a single line could separate not just territories, but families. He was given 5 weeks. Maps were spread across tables. Census data, already outdated, was used to estimate religious demographics. Political pressures mounted from all sides. Leaders argued over districts, over rivers, over access to roads and railways. Every decision carried consequences that could not be contained. Radcliffe worked in isolation, aware that whatever line he drew would be contested. Outside those rooms, life continued, uncertain, but not yet undone. In a village near Rawalpindi, a Sikh farmer hears rumors that the land may fall on the other side. He has lived here all his life. His father is buried in the fields behind the house. His neighbors, Muslim families he has known for decades, offer reassurances that nothing will change. But the rumors persist. A line is coming. No one knows exactly where it will fall. By early August, tension had thickened into something harder to ignore. Armed groups began to form. In some areas, isolated attacks turned into cycles of retaliation. Trains were stopped. Caravans were ambushed. What had once been local disputes began to align along communal lines, each act feeding the next. On August 14th and 15th, 1947, two new nations were born. Pakistan came into existence first, followed by India a day later. Celebrations erupted in cities. Flags were raised, speeches were delivered. For a brief moment, the promise of independence seemed to eclipse the uncertainty. But the border, the line that would define these nations, was still not public. Radcliffe's award, as it came to be known, was only announced on August 17th. By then, the movement had already begun. People did not wait for official confirmation. They moved based on fear, on rumor, on the assumption that they might soon find themselves on the wrong side of a line they could not see. Columns of refugees formed along roads that stretched for miles. Some traveled by train, others on foot, carrying what they could. Carts piled with belongings creaked under the weight of hurried decisions. Elderly parents were lifted onto makeshift beds. Children clung to whatever hands they could find. It is estimated that around 14 to 15 million people would eventually cross these new borders, the largest mass migration in recorded history. But at that moment, no one was counting. They were simply trying to leave. In a crowded train leaving Lahore, a young woman presses her forehead against the window. Her family has decided to go east toward India. They do not know what awaits them there. They only know that staying feels more dangerous. Across the compartment, an older man folds a piece of paper, property documents perhaps, or a letter. He tucks it into his shirt, as if it might still matter on the other side. The train begins to move. Outside, smoke rises in the distance. No one inside speaks of it, but everyone sees it, and somewhere ahead, the line, newly drawn, not yet understood, waits. What no one can yet see is how quickly that line will turn from a boundary into a wound. By the time the border is announced on August 17th, the violence is no longer contained. It moves with the same urgency as the refugees themselves, spreading along roads, railways, and river crossings, anywhere people are forced into motion. In Punjab, the division is immediate and precise on paper, but chaotic on the ground. Villages that had stood for generations, mixed, interdependent, begin to fracture within days. Armed bands form quickly. Some are organized. Many are not. Men who, weeks earlier, had been farmers or shopkeepers now carry weapons, driven by rumor, fear, and the belief that if they do not act first, they will be the ones driven out. The state, in these first weeks, is fragile. The British administration has largely withdrawn. Authority has been transferred, but the new governments are still assembling. Police units are overstretched. In many districts, there is no effective control. And so, control dissolves. A convoy of Muslim families moves westward toward what is now Pakistan. Their carts carry bedding, utensils, sacks of grain. The road is exposed, stretching across open land. At first, the group moves steadily, surrounded by others making the same journey. But as the road narrows near a cluster of trees, the convoy slows. There is movement ahead. No one announces it, but the shift is immediate. People tighten their grip on what they carry. Voices drop. The realization spreads quietly. They are being watched. What follows unfolds quickly. Shouting. The first shots. Animals panic, breaking free from their harnesses. People scatter, abandoning carts that only minutes earlier held their lives. Some run toward the fields. Others freeze, unsure which direction is safer. When the noise subsides, the road is no longer a road. Those who survive do not stay. They gather what they can and keep moving, faster now, not looking back. The trains, once arteries of connection, begin to carry something heavier. Routes between Amritsar and Lahore fill beyond capacity. People climb onto roofs, cling to doorways, press into compartments meant for a fraction of their number. At stations, information arrives in fragments. A train delayed, another diverted. Then stories, uncertain at first, then repeated with growing certainty. A train has arrived with no living passengers. The effect is immediate. Fare travels faster than any official message. It shapes decisions in ways that cannot be reversed. Some hesitate to board, others rush forward, believing that delay is more dangerous than the journey itself. In Delhi, the arrival of refugees transforms the city's edges. Camps appear almost overnight. In open grounds, near government buildings, along roads where space can be found. Families settle with what little they have carried. Relief efforts begin, but supplies struggle to keep pace. Inside the city, tension rises. Neighborhoods that had long been mixed begin to separate under pressure. Rumors move through streets faster than verification. A single incident, real or imagined, can shift the mood of an entire area. A shopkeeper stands inside his closed store, listening. He knows the voices outside, or thinks he does. He has traded with them for years. Now he measures each sound, trying to decide whether to remain or to leave. Leaving means abandoning everything. Staying may mean something worse. Across Punjab, the scale of movement becomes difficult to comprehend. Columns of refugees stretch for miles, lines of people, animals, and carts moving slowly across the landscape. From a distance, they appear continuous. Up close, they are fragmented. Families separated, groups merging and breaking apart. Water becomes a problem, so does food. Illness follows closely behind. Yet the movement does not stop, because stopping is seen as risk. In early September, the violence intensifies further. Districts like Gurdaspur and Sheikhupura undergo rapid transformation. Populations shift almost entirely within weeks. What had been mixed regions become divided, not through formal planning, but through flight and expulsion. This change is uneven. In some places, neighbors help one another leave safely. In others, trust collapses completely. A Muslim family hides their Sikh neighbors for a night, guiding them toward a safer route before dawn. A Hindu man escorts a group of strangers across a dangerous stretch of road, then turns back alone. These moments are brief, often unrecorded, but they exist alongside the violence, complicating any simple account of what is happening. Still, the broader pattern remains. By late September, millions have crossed the border. Estimates suggest between 14 and 15 million people are displaced in total. The number of those killed remains uncertain, ranging from 200,000 to as high as 1 million. The variation itself reflects the disorder. Many deaths are never recorded. Gradually, some structure begins to return. Military escorts are organized for refugee convoys. Certain train routes are guarded. Camps expand, becoming more stable, though conditions remain difficult. A new order is forming, but it is built on movement that has not yet fully ended. At a crossing point along the border, a man arrives with his family after days of travel. He steps forward, then pauses. For a moment, he turns back, not to return, but to look. There's nothing visible from where he stands. No house, no field, only distance. He adjusts the bundle on his shoulder and continues walking. Behind him, the past recedes without ceremony. Ahead, there is only uncertainty. And yet, the movement continues. By October 1947, the movement begins to slow, not because the need has ended, but because fewer remain to move. The border, once uncertain and invisible, hardens into something enforced. Checkpoints rise where fields once lay open. Soldiers stand where neighbors once crossed freely. What had been rumor is now marked, guarded, and final. Yet the human aftermath does not resolve so quickly. In camps outside Delhi, thousands settle into a fragile routine. Tents stretch across open ground, stitched from cloth and salvaged material. Water is rationed carefully. Food arrives, but never quite enough. Lists are drawn up. Names of the displaced, names of the missing, but many remain unaccounted for. A woman waits near a distribution line, holding a dented bowl. She has been here for days. Her husband had left briefly, intending to return with belongings they could not carry in the first rush. He has not come back. No one offers certainty, only silence. Children, meanwhile, adapt in ways the adults cannot. They learn the geography of the camp, the shortest path to water, the hours when food is given. They form small routines inside instability, turning unfamiliar ground into something navigable. Across the border, similar camps rise near Lahore. The pattern repeats with different names, but the same absence. Entire neighborhoods in both countries begin to refill, not with continuity, but with replacement. Homes left behind are quickly occupied. Governments attempt to manage this transformation. Systems are created to allocate abandoned properties, to register claims, to provide some form of compensation. Files accumulate. Decisions are made, often quickly, sometimes arbitrarily. What was once personal, land, houses, belongings, becomes administrative. But paperwork cannot restore what has been broken. For many, the idea of return lingers in the early months. Perhaps this division is temporary. Perhaps, with time, people might go back. But as weeks pass, that belief weakens. The border does not soften. It becomes more defined, more heavily guarded. Two states begin to take shape, not just politically, but socially, each absorbing those who have arrived, each redefining itself around new majorities. In Punjab, the transformation is stark. Regions that once held mixed communities now reflect a single identity. The diversity that had existed, complex, sometimes strained but real, disappears within weeks. In one village on the Indian side, a Sikh family moves into a house left behind by Muslims who fled. The structure remains intact. Inside, there are traces, marks on walls, objects too small to carry away. For a time, these traces are left untouched. At night, the older members of the family speak quietly about the place they left behind. Fields now across the border, neighbors they may never see again. The younger ones listen, but their memories are already shifting, attaching to this new ground. Elsewhere in Pakistan, the same process unfolds in reverse. This is how stability begins to form. Not through reconciliation, but through substitution. By early 1948, large-scale violence has begun to subside, though its effects remain visible. What follows is a slower adjustment, building lives within boundaries that were drawn quickly, but will endure. The political consequences emerge almost immediately. India and Pakistan, created from the same moment, move on to separate paths. Disputes over territory, especially in Kashmir, carry forward the tensions of partition into new conflicts. But beyond politics, the deeper impact settles into quieter spaces. Family histories are divided. Languages carry echoes of places no longer visited. Traditions shift as communities rebuild in unfamiliar surroundings. Memory becomes the only link across the border, and memory does not remain fixed. Those who experienced the migration carry it differently over time. Some speak of it in detail, recounting the journey with precision. Others remain silent, holding it in a way that shapes their lives without words. For the next generation, 1947 becomes something inherited, present but not directly lived. Yet its effects remain embedded in daily life. Decades later, the border still stands, heavily guarded, carefully maintained. What was once drawn in haste has become permanent. But its origins remain close beneath the surface. A line created in 5 weeks displaced millions. It redrew maps, but more than that, it altered the meaning of home. Not gradually, all at once. And for those who crossed it, or were forced to, the journey did not end at the border. It continued, in camps, in new cities, in lives rebuilt from fragments. The train that arrived in silence at Amritsar was not a single event. It was one moment in a larger rupture, one that unfolded across countless journeys, many of which left no record. What remains are fragments, stories carried forward, a border that still divides. And the quiet understanding that its creation was not only political, but deeply human, its consequences stretching far beyond the moment the line was drawn.